All right, so in this lesson, we're going to discuss and also design photo galleries or image galleries, depending on who you ask what they're called. And so essentially, they're just a number of different thumbnails that are placed onto the layout. And for now, again, we're just working with desktop at this point. And they're arranged in such a way that allows the user to easily access, click, or tap and then see a full version of the picture of some sort. We're going to get into the prototyping and the interactivity later on in the course. So for now, we're just sticking to desktop design and how to feature all of those little thumbnails. And we're going to examine different ways that we can approach the layout of these pictures or these photographs. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a dark background here for the canvas, just because I know I want to use a light frame color. So we're going to choose desktop here. Let's get this in here. And we're just going to leave the background absolutely white. That's fine for this demonstration. And let's get started. So here in Figma, whenever you want to have a picture in something, and typically these are going to be in the format of a square or a rectangle of some sort. So we're going to stick with that. So we're going to choose R, or just click up here in the rectangle tool. And I'm just going to drag out something around here. So the width, it needs to be enough so that we can fill out 4. So I personally want to have 4 columns and perhaps 2 to 3 rows of these pictures. So if I just duplicate this real quickly just to test, will that be good enough? That looks pretty good here. So we'll delete these. And now let's go ahead and get an actual photograph in here. So I'm going to right click while that is selected. We're going to go to plugins and we're going to choose Unsplash right here. And if you don't have that installed, of course, go ahead and install that by going to Browse Plugins in Community and then come back to the project. All right, so Unsplash. And I suppose at this point we don't necessarily have to put in an image here. It doesn't really matter. I think what we'll do is just leave this up. And if you want to follow along exactly, the width by height is 261 by 188. And let's figure out, how can we lay this out. So this is going to be like an ultra simple, just plain Jane version of a image gallery in which you cannot go wrong. So like I said, I want to have 4 columns. So let's get those out. So we're going to duplicate those. And one question you may be asking yourself at this point, and it's a decision that you have to make, is how much white space do you want, if any, between these columns or between the photographs? So for now, I'm just going to stick to this amount of white space. And of course, we can duplicate that. And there we go. All right. So what is the difference between, say, this and maybe this? Really, there's not that much. It still serves its purpose, and you'll see once we get the images inside of it, we'll see we'll have a high contrast, in a sense, just negative space between them, or white space, or however you want to look at it. So really, it's kind of up to you at this point. Now, some people will also move this all the way in here, which we will do, and where there's no white space. And you'll see some considerations that we'll have for that. But for now, we're just going to take these 4, duplicate them, and we want to make sure we have equal white space in here versus here. I see sometimes people, new designers, they'll do something like this, and it just kind of throws it off a little bit, or it'll be slightly off, and it doesn't look good. So try to make sure you get equal white space in the columns and the rows, in this single row right here. All right, so now what we can do is we can take each one of these, we can hit abstract. We'll choose this one here. We'll choose this one, this one. Sorry, it was not going as fast as I expected. There we go. Let's take this. And we'll get this done in a second. It's not working. That one does not want to work. We'll just choose that one then. All right. Now you can see Depending on the photograph, sometimes you have no control over the photographs or the type of photographs that will be present in the gallery. So for instance, we have this one right here, which is very little contrast. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's still fine. You can see this one has a very high amount of contrast, and that's completely fine. Let's also give ourselves a headline or a heading. So we're going to put just photo gallery. This I would say is objectively too small, so we want to bump this up. Let's go out here, let's choose Poppins for this, and you know what, let's make it light. All right, so that looks good. This right here is an effective, well-designed photo gallery, and it works exactly as you would expect. It's easy to see each of the individual photographs, and there's no issues. I would say if you want this to be completely polished though, take everything, group it, come up here, center it, and vertically and horizontally. And that way everything is lined up perfectly. All right, very, very cool. Now let's see what else we can do. I'm gonna right click and ungroup these. With this gallery. So to show you just other iterations in terms of design. So like I mentioned before, we can also, but not in every circumstance, and I'll tell you what those circumstances are, we can also just completely get rid of all of the white space. So we're just gonna move these together, and then we'll do it one more time on the row. All right. So now we'll take everything again, group it up, center it, and there we go, right click and ungroup. Okay, so what is the difference between these two? Obviously it's the lack of white space between the actual gap between each row and column. The one situation in which I would not advise not having any white space or negative space between these elements would be if you're working with a photo gallery that has the same type of photographs, like they're either really light, they're really mid, or just very similar in nature. The reason for that is if they're too similar in nature, it will be hard for people to distinguish between the individual photographs. That's really not a problem here. We can clearly see this one versus this one. We could clearly see there's 8 different photographs here, but sometimes if the photos are too similar, then you definitely want to have that white space between the photographs like this. All right, so next up, let's see what else we can do. We can create what's called a masonry layout. All right, so a masonry layout, in this context, we're gonna wanna have 3 different rows, at least for a masonry layout for it to work effectively. So I'm gonna move this up here, and here's what this is all about. So the masonry layout is one in which the photographs or the thumbnails are sized differently, and it makes for a really cool aesthetic for a photo gallery. We could also take this one right here, move it down, take this one down. All right, so that looks pretty cool. Then we could also take this one right here, and maybe we'll put this one right here, drag this one out. Let's duplicate one more. We'll get our Unsplash plugin and choose abstract, come down here, and there we go. So now let's get ourselves some equal white space. This is a little bit of a larger frame. Oops, sometimes you have to double click into there. And then we'll group, center, and there we go. Very, very, very cool stuff. So as we can see here, it gives you, like I said, an entirely different aesthetic for the actual photograph or the thumbnails. And like I said, this typically it could work just with these two rows as well. So I don't want to say you have to have 3 rows. You need at least 2 rows like we have here, but it's just a more modern approach to laying out and displaying photographs. So for me, I would probably opt to go this route these days just because it's a more unique approach. Now, really, if you know what the photographs are going to be, You can definitely pick and choose where each photograph should go, because sometimes these might be darker, these might be lighter, depending if it's random. So that's entirely up to you. And let's take a look at another way to approach these layouts. So sometimes you'll have a situation where maybe we only have 4 photographs, but you want to fill out a particular section of a landing page a little bit more. You could do something like this. They don't always have to be, you know, square or close to square. This is completely fine as well. We could also, if you have more photographs, but you like this particular aesthetic, we could also duplicate this. Duplicate this. Here, let's move this back in. Sometimes when you drag these off and your cursor goes off, it will throw off or throw out the element from the frame. So that's why I was backing up a little bit. And then of course we can come back here to Unsplash and make these unique. I'll just scroll down here somewhere random, right there. And let it download real quickly, and then also perhaps we'll choose that one. All right, that looks very good. And then so now the intention, perhaps we'll do this when we get into the prototyping and the interactivity portion of the course. We could have these be a kind of like a carousel that could move back and forth. And sometimes you can even have navigational items right here where a person could click a left icon or a right icon. And again, that's something we'll get to the future. Let's show yet another way to create a different aesthetic for a gallery. So let's delete these. Actually, let's not delete all of them. I think we'll just delete 2 of them. And this one's a real cool way to approach this sort of thing. Let's just move these down here for a second. I do want to make these a little bit larger than they are. So I'm just going to hold Shift and Alt and scale up right around there. Let's move these off. And so I'll take this first one and I'm just going to rotate it slightly. So this is a more artsy approach. Maybe this one will be just straight, maybe just slightly off. Okay. This one will come back. And this is something we can bring this to the front that one can do depending on the context of the branding for this particular company, for whoever this layout and this gallery is for. So let me put this to send to back. And there we go. Let's move this, kind of get these more centered, maybe a little bit lower here because we have the photo gallery icon right here. And there we go. This is also something that's a very modern approach that you'll see sometimes on UI UX designer portfolios where they're featuring their work. And usually once they're in the browser, there will be some sort of mouse interactivity. Sometimes there might be subtle movement between these, and it makes for a really cool kind of fluid, very unique approach to laying out photographs. So this is definitely an option as well, although it's not an option for every scenario. So it all depends on, you know, the branding and the company itself. Let's also do another variation because sometimes you don't always have, I'm going to put this one right here. You don't always have just photographs that are a part of an image gallery. Sometimes they might have titles or like a picture title or label. Sometimes it'll be metadata like an actual date, like an author, all sorts of things that might be present in the actual photographs. And so I want to show you how to design for that. All right, so we're going to assume we just want a title for each one of these, and we'll just do maybe 2 of these because it would be a little bit work intensive to get this done. So I'm just going to left click around here, and we're going to give this a name of Interstellar Nightmares. I think I'm spelling Interstellar right. It's either an E or an A. I think it's an A, but either way, you get the point. So we have pop-ins, we have light chosen, and it's white. Now this right here is not enough contrast. This is kind of difficult. Now if we had this over here, yeah, this would be fine, but sometimes you don't have control over the images. And so you need a way to fix that. Now I'm gonna right click and ungroup everything. And we're gonna just grab just this photograph here. And one way that, there's multiple ways you can tackle this sort of thing, and I'll show you two ways. So first we can just take an actually it might be easier just to take this, duplicate it, get rid of that. We'll make a fill of black, and then we'll drag this down. And the size of it depends on how much you're okay with this overlay right here hiding the picture itself. Now you could also take this and we could take the opacity down, because it doesn't have to be 100% opacity. It could just be maybe around 60% or 50%. Obviously if it goes too low, then you're going to run into the same issue of not enough contrast before. So I would probably say this is a little bit too large, so we'll take this down maybe around 22. And this is an entirely acceptable aesthetic that could be placed onto other areas. So for instance, if we duplicate this, all right, we're gonna right click and bring to front. And you need to design for the possibility of multiple lines in the type. And then as such, this as well, we'll go ahead and adjust the leading here, or the line height. All right, so you can see clearly this is one potential way to handle increasing the contrast of the type that sits behind these. Now another way, let me delete both of these, is we could take this photograph and we can add to it, we can delete that, by the way, we can add to it a linear gradient. All right, so what we'll do is reverse these, because this is the dark one. We want the dark one to start at the bottom here. And notice how it says 20%. Make sure that's 100% right here. So notice how we've already increased the contrast right here. And I could show you that by just clicking this eye icon. So you do also have control over the length of the linear gradient. Somewhere maybe in the middle would be perfectly fine, especially for some of them that have multiple lines of type. And this completely works fine, just as is. And let's do that one more time just for practice on this one. We're gonna add a linear gradient. Make sure this is 100%. We're gonna reverse these real quick and push this down here. And there we go, much, much better. So now if we toggle that, we can clearly see a massive difference to where it is much easier to read this type. So I'm also gonna show you one more variation here. And this is gonna be an iteration where we're actually going to design a whole landing page, or the top portion at least, using one of these masonry grid layouts, maybe this one. So let's duplicate this. Let's get rid of, let's first ungroup this. We'll leave this off over here for a second. And so we could actually use this masonry grid layout as kind of like an aesthetic that can be used for kind of like filling out a large portion of a hero section of a landing page. So let's do something like this. Let's get ourselves kind of equal white space on the right here and on the bottom. And we could also do the same thing on the left here. Maybe I'll want to make this even more white space all around. Let's come like right here. This is just to show you some of the cool stuff that you can do. Maybe we will take one of the elements that we deleted right here. I've copied that. I'm just going to come back here and paste this in. Maybe we'll put one up here as well, kind of just to fill out this area. We're going to make this more height. And again, I'm just kind of having fun playing around with the placement of things. we could take this and we're going to assume this is our headline. So our headline will say a photo gallery of excellence. All right, something silly like that. Increase that size. Let's go even larger. And then let's reduce the line height. We'll come over here. I did already on my other monitor, reference monitor, have a subheadline, so I'm just going to paste that right here, just so we can kind of move along a little bit quicker. And then notice if we get our rulers up, Shift R, we'll try to get these two aligned with each other. And also these aligned as well, so that now we have kind of like a nice square that's created here in the middle. Shift R again to get rid of that. And if you wanted to, we could also, let's put in a fake company name. I'll just put my personal name here. Auto width this. Maybe this will be bold. And we'll also do extremely fast and quick navigation. We'll just put this maybe starting right here. We'll make this regular. And I'm going to put in home. And we'll make this a little bit smaller. We're at 21 now, so we can come down maybe to 16. Make sure this is kind of evened out. There we go. It's right in the center of this type, so that's good. We'll duplicate this here. About. Maybe we'll have a my work. Now, of course, if this were a real project, you want to make these components, but I'm just showing you what this looks like here and how you can use a photo gallery that's actually an integral part of your hero section of a landing page. So we could put this right here. And again, we want to symbolize what is the current link that's selected. And there we go. So now we've kind of created, actually it's not perfect yet. Let me get this pushed down a little bit more. We'll select everything, because I want an equal amount of white space up here versus here, so you could see that that wasn't the case. We can center this, and there we go. Look how nice that looks and polished. And of course, this isn't the only way you could approach this. Ungroup this. You could possibly take all of these, with exception to this, and maybe push them all the way out. Then maybe have a little bit more space to kind of put this here in the center. And there's a lot of ways that you could approach this. I personally like this one a little bit more. But yeah, look at all these iterations of galleries that we've created. And what will be exciting is once we get to the responsive design section of this course, where we can take these and say, hey, this is for a full desktop. What is it going to look like on a tablet? How's it going to respond on a phone? And so, of course, we're going to get to all that along with prototyping and interactivity. What if somebody clicks on one of these? What are these going to happen? What's it going to look like on desktop? What will it look like on tablet or mobile as well? So for now, the reason we're sticking, again, just to reiterate this, just with desktop, is just to help you define and develop your eye for designing on the full experience. And then we will work our way down from tablet and then mobile as well.